And to be totally honest, not to be like pessimistic, but with a short, I'm not super hopeful on the festival circuit, and I don't really care about it.
Are there alternative paths to making it in Hollywood? What do those paths look like? And how should indie filmmakers think about distributing their films? Are festivals even worth it? On today's show, Luke Barnett joins me to chat about his career in filmmaking, the new short he directed, and how he's thinking about the festival circuit. It's awesome stuff. You're going to love it. I'm Jay Sherer, and this is How Stories Work. Luke, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me. It's always a pleasure to talk to fellow creative folks, and especially people that I've met on Twitter who are awesome. So thanks for joining me on the show.
Yeah, good to actually meet you in somewhat in person.
Yeah, and I will tell everybody out there, definitely give Luke a follow. He's one of the more interesting people to follow. He has great commentary on the industry. You've been a writer for, I think you just told me, like over 20 years?
No. The very first thing I ever wrote whatsoever was in 2013. So
okay.
just
So
over
about
10 years.
Okay. But you've been an actor for longer then?
I moved to LA initially to be an actor and did all the horrible things that you do when you move to LA to be an actor. And I auditioned for every bad student film and non-union commercial. And I'd probably been at it for like 6 years. And I had two roommates who were way more successful than me. One of them was a composer who did like Juno and Up in the Air and some really great stuff. And the other one was an actress named Carly Craig, who often worked with some of the bigger comedy troupes. She worked with like David Wayne a lot and the Farrelly brothers. And this was when whoever's, 40 plus remembers Funny or Die. It was kind of the heyday of Funny or Die. And she was working with them a lot. They were very popular at the time. It was Will Ferrell's sketch comedy website for anyone who doesn't know Funny or Die. And she basically said, why aren't you creating your own content? Why aren't you write something? I'll take it to Funny or Die. I'll be in it. And so I wrote this sketch, my very first time writing anything, called Growing Up with Gosling, where I basically played Ryan Gosling's childhood best friend, who he would always try to cast as the second lead in his movies. But then the studio would replace me with a woman. And so then the sketch was like me and Ryan Gosling wearing matching tank tops and glasses and tattoos, and then clips of his movies where I'm green screened in place of Rachel McAdams or Christina Hendricks or whoever it was. And so she was in it. She took it to Funny or Die. We did it. And this little video that was probably shot for $1,000 or whatever was suddenly in the LA Times and the Hollywood Reporter. And for me, I got more traction off of this tiny 3-minute video than I did from 6 years of traditionally pursuing acting. And that was like a very big light bulb moment for me as in terms of like the direction to push into, which oddly enough, I ended up, we can keep talking about that stuff, but I ended up kind of pushing so far into writing and producing that I stopped acting for like 9 years.
No way.
And I took a break in acting until we made another movie that I was in like 3 years ago. So it's kind of a crazy way it all happened.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you basically were like, hey, I'm going to try to get in the standard way of getting into the industry, and then decided, you know what, the standard way, I'm going to try this other stuff as well. And then you kind of just pursued that for a while, more of the indie kind of way of breaking in. How has that experience been? Because I think about this a lot because just a little bit of background on me. I've been writing since I was really, really young, not films. I didn't start writing films until I was in college, at which my professor told me, you're horrible at writing films. You should go back to writing prose, which I thought was hilarious. But I pretty quickly realized that the standard way of like trying to get into the industry and break into the industry, that's one way of doing it, but there are other ways of behaving that you can break into the industry as well. So how did you decide on like, okay, this worked for me, maybe I should do more of this? And then what did you do after that? What did you decide to do after that bit of success?
Well, it was interesting. It was like we did that video, and then I kind of was like, this is what I'm going to keep doing. I'm going to keep writing and producing these videos for Funny or Die that I'll be in. And they all kind of, not all, but a lot of them replicated that success, which isn't anything crazy. You're not making money off of it. Funny or Die shoots their videos, used to shoot their videos, even their biggest videos that have Brad Pitt in them, literally, they would shoot them for like $2,500. So it's like the writer of that, or the actor in that, is not getting paid, you know what I mean? Really anything. So, but a lot of those videos kind of had that same amount of success, just in the sense of like, they would kind of take off and go viral, or they would get good press. And so all of a sudden I just had this like kind of real content to showcase. And at some point in that time period, I had connected with a director, producer, who I just like, we hit it off great. And so both as friends, to this day, he's one of my best friends. And at the time, creatives, it was like, I like to write and produce, and he likes to direct and produce. And so we just like really worked well together. And we both, like probably many people who listen to this podcast, wanted to make our first movie. And so we kind of really like set on, we're going to make this first feature film. And so we made a short called Fear Inc. that did pretty well and kind of placed top 5 in this contest, which oddly enough, the same contest it placed top 5 in, the other one that was top 5 was Lights Out, which got turned into like a much bigger studio movie. But then we got this movie made, and we did it, we did all the things that they tell you not to do. We used credit cards and had friends invest and borrowed money and shot the movie without having any money for post. We did all these things you're not supposed to do. And got lucky. This movie, like, I'm very proud of it for being the very first feature script that I wrote in our first movie that we made. And it got into Tribeca and kind of like, then played all the genre festivals, Citrus and Fright Fest and all that stuff. And kind of became this little tiny movie that worked for us. And it didn't by any means make us rich or get us a Marvel movie, but like it got us agents and managers and a lawyer, and it kind of got us into that world professionally. And at that point, I think in my, mentally, it was like, this is all working for me much better than pursuing acting was working for me. And so I just 100% focused on writing and producing at that, just before that point, but then I just kept doing it. So I basically took like an 8-year complete hiatus from acting and just focused on writing and producing.
That's awesome. Now, what was the name of that film?
Fear Inc. Fear Inc.
Okay. Yeah. Fear Inc. And that was the name of the short and the feature?
That was the name of the short and the feature. Yeah. And it's basically about this, this guy who's obsessed with all the haunted house attractions like Universal Horror Nights and stuff like that. And cool. He's always disappointed. And then he finds out about this company that essentially promises to, bring his greatest fears to life. And when it starts to happen, it very much blends the line of like, is this company, or are these people fucked up, horrific human beings?
That sounds amazing. So how, now do you mind me asking what the budget was for that film?
Sure. Yeah. We shot it for $300,000.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. So so you take a break from acting, you do that film. What's the next thing that happens after that?
I mean, the one thing that's interesting is like when you have a film that even has remotely that level of success, which is not anything crazy, but I just mean it gets into like a top tier festival, like even before the movie came out or anything. If you make a feature film that gets into like a Tribeca or a South by Southwest or something, you probably will get decent representation who wants to work with you and hopes that you become the next huge thing. And they do, at the very least, get you meetings. And so, in that period from between Fear Inc. and this movie that kind of got me back into acting called Faith-Based, we produced 2 other movies for other people. We sold 2 TV pitches. I wrote 2 other scripts that didn't get made, but like got good responses. And it was just kind of a bit of that, the writer producer grind, without the focus on acting for those like 4 years, basically.
That's so cool. That's so cool. What any stories from that era where you like learned something really important that you could tell me about? Like, what was something that you just learned that was like, that was amazing?
I think the biggest thing that I learned, and people kind of hate to hear this because nobody wants to put other people in a box. And I totally get that. And I always will be a believer in like, write whatever you want to write and all that stuff. But I will say this, when Fear Inc. premiered at Tribeca, there was like a 6-month to 9-month period after that premiere where we met with everybody. And I wish that we had another Fear Inc. I wish we had, whether it be a TV show or a movie, I don't care. Every person sees a movie that sees whatever you made last, and that's what they're thinking about, or read whatever you ain't. And if it's cool or it has hype behind it, they want their version of that.
Right.
And so I wish that, like, when Fear Inc. premiered at Tribeca, I had already had a feature written that was, let's just say, another horror thriller or something else that it could be like, oh, you liked Fear Inc.? Let me give you this.
Yeah.
Because I think it would have gotten made right away. And instead, we had written a half-hour, totally broad comedy that was like a fucked up Mr. Rogers that literally could not have been further from what our movie was. And don't get me wrong, like one producer, like it kind of got taken on, but you could just see the faces in the room the second they expected to hear one thing. And we were like, here, we're here to tell you about this silly comedy. And they were like, what? Like, okay, let me just recalibrate.
Right.
Because I just watched your movie.
Yeah.
And so now, you know, it's taken a long time in my mind to like really find what my voice is. Like, even when I watch Fear Inc., it's like, I'm proud of it, but it's not necessarily my, like, now I've kind of just now figuring out what I feel like my voice is and who I am as a actor and a writer and a producer. It's taken 10 years to kind of do that, which I think is totally fine. But I do think that would be the advice I would say. If you have something that you're working on, you know, have another thing that if your thing is successful, somebody else would be interested in hearing about.
Yeah, that sounds like amazing advice. I know that like the dream is to be the Michael Crichton of writing, right? Where you can write, I'm going to write an ape movie. I'm going to write a dinosaur movie. I'm going to write a law movie, whatever. But that's not, I mean, the people who have some of the, even take any industry, right? Even in the book publishing industry, these guys that write like 3 fantasy books a year and are making millions of dollars a year based on the fact that people love their fantasy stuff. They can't just turn around and write a detective noir and expect all that audience to go with them. So,
well, and to be fair, it's like, if you get to a certain, you know, you just got to remember too, you get to a certain point and then you can, like, you get to a certain point, like if Stephen King puts out anything, the publisher is going to read it. They're going to put it, you know, it's like, you know, you have to kind of like, you know, you have to even have a reputation. People are always so worried that they're going to get pigeonholed for something. And I'm like, dude, you're lucky to get pigeonholed, because that means that you're known for anything. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm like, you're 2 steps too far in your mindset right now if you're worried about getting pigeonholed as like the horror guy, because right now you're not a guy to them. Like, they don't know who you are. And so it's like, worry first about even becoming a guy on their radar.
Right.
And then you can stress out over if you're pigeonholed or not.
Yeah, that's a lot of wisdom right there for sure. Now the latest thing you did was you directed. Now I'm assuming you wrote and directed this latest short.
Well, so I did. So what we did a movie called Faith Based in 2020, basically, and that's what got me back into like the acting world. And it was like an interesting thing where we had this idea that's about these 2 guys who come to the realization that like all these bad Christian movies starring Kevin Sorbo or Dean Cain or whatever make a ton of money because people's churches will buy out the theaters and do all these crazy things. And so these guys set out to make a Christian movie of their own, even though they're not Christians and they don't know how to make movies and stuff. So it's like a satire of the Christian film industry. And originally we were going to make this for 10 grand on our phones with just our friends. And we were going to kind of like mockumentary style do this thing. And I'd never experienced anything like this. And I still to this day have not experienced anything like it again, but it just so organically got bigger. Like every person we sent it to just said yes. I think people just like being a part of like a fun satire. They're always getting sent the same kind of like crime thrillers or whatever. And so we sent it to Lance Reddick to play my adoptive dad. And I did not think Lance Reddick was going to say yes. And suddenly Lance Reddick was in the movie. So the next person we went to, we were like, we're doing this satire. Lance Reddick's in it. And then the next person, I think David Koechner from like Anchorman and stuff, was like, yeah, I'm in. And then we're going to the next person with like Lance Reddick and David Koechner in. And then Jason Alexander's in. And then once Jason Alexander's in, it's like everybody's kind of in, because everybody's like, I want to work with Jason Alexander. So then it just kind of, we were going to shoot on our phones and somebody was like, oh, I'll give you could borrow these 2 red heliums that we're not using for these 2 months. And so then we had like 2 real cameras and we're like, well, now we need a crew. It was just like, it's so organically grew. And then I was like, well, all these people are in it now. It's going to look real. Maybe we should recast me and my real life best friend with like famous actors. And I owe the director for this, because the director was like, you know what? I think we should keep you and Tanner as these roles, because you're real life best friends. You have this real chemistry. Let's just play into that, and then keep casting up all around you or whatever. And so we did that, and then the movie was like very well received. Like it's like the only thing I've been in that's like 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, and just like got a good response. And so somewhere in that process, an agent that I had known for a long time from like the producer side, where I would like cast her clients, she came to me and she was like, you want to get back into acting? And I was like, I don't think I want to get back to like what I was doing before. And she was like, no, we use faith-based, and we don't do that. And so she's been like the best thing to happen to me, and really like gave me an acting career based off of this movie. So it was like that. It all kind of came back around in like a really nice, interesting, organic way.
What a cool story. That's awesome. And it's so cool that like people were gravitating toward the script so much that it could just sell itself. Like that's awesome. And what a great concept too. It's a great concept for a film.
It's a good concept. And I think it's like, it's like thinking about, one of the, this is Your Lucky Day was the thing I produced that came out earlier this year. And it was my 6th movie as a producer. And I think the biggest casting lesson I've learned, which you can hear from like a million different people on different podcasts, but it is really true, is like when you don't have money and you're offering people $300 a day or whatever we offered for all of our movies that are shot for such low budgets, you just have to kind of get inside the head of the actor that you're trying to get and say, what would make this person want to do this? Because like Lance Reddick's actually like the perfect example. Lance Reddick has played a cop in 100 things that are massive budgets. He's been a cop on 3 different TV shows, all these things. So if you go, we're going to go make a crime thriller for $200,000. Let's offer Lance Reddick this role of a cop for $215 a day. Why would Lance Reddick do that? Like, what would be his reason to do that as an actor? You know what I mean? Because he doesn't need $200, and he's played this role 100 times on way bigger stuff. So like, what's the incentive there? But you go to Lance Reddick and say, do you want to wear a green screen suit and be this wacky pastor and all this stuff? And he's like, you know what? I never get sent this. And that's literally like, when he first read the script, he wanted to play the role that Jason Alexander played. And we were like, you know what? You're Lance Reddick. You can play whatever you want in this movie. But like, can we talk to you about it? And we had like a phone, we had a call with him. And then the agent called like an hour later and was like, actually, Lance wants to play the original role that you offered him now. But it's just like, I see it all the time where like, I'll work with a director or something who's trying to get their first movie off the ground, and they'll have, for good reason, imagine some actor in that role.
Right.
And I meet with them and I'm like, okay, I know why you imagine this guy in the role, but the reason you imagine this guy in the role is because you've seen that guy in this role 10 times.
Right.
And he's great in this role. But why is he going to do your role for no money? It's like,
there's like a strategy behind it that makes total sense. I think that is a good way to look at any kind of collaboration, right? Like, what's the value I can provide you, right? Yeah. So it's not just what value can you provide me, but like, what value can I provide you as well?
People too often just think of it like, if this person was in my project or a part of my project, it's going to benefit my project. Sure, that's absolutely the case. That's obvious. But you need to think of it from like the psychology of like, when this person receives my offer, what is their brain doing? And what are they thinking as to like, holy shit, I got to work with this guy. What is their thing there? And if you can't answer it right, then like recalibrate a little bit,
Exactly. Now, how did you even get in front of Lance Reddick in that case in the first place? Like, how did you get the script in front of him?
I think like after, between 2016 when we made Fear Inc. And 2020, I just had developed like great relationships as a producer with agents and managers and whatnot. Not that they would like, obviously they can't just put clients and stuff, but they know that like our first movie premiered at Tribeca. We're not going to just like make something that looks like a student film. It's going to like look and feel real. They're going to at least like send the offer to the client. And some of the agents or managers who I have a good relationship with, who have had a good experience working with us, they're going to call the client and say, just so you know, you're going to get sent this ND. These guys are really cool. You know what I mean? Like, there's a good word in there. Like with Jason's actually a good example of like one of his, not his agent, but an agent at Innovative, which is the agency that he's at, is a big fan of our stuff.
Oh, cool.
So she was really quick to put a different client earlier on in the process in. Like she pitched us people. She was just like, oh man, I love this idea. What about Christoph, this guy from Last Man Standing? And we were like, Christoph would be great in this role. So we're already working with her. And then when I came to her and I said, this is crazy, but what about Jason for this role? She was like, let me send it to his manager. And so she calls the manager and I've seen the email. She writes him and she's like, these guys are awesome. They make awesome stuff. They want to offer Jason this role. It's no money. Does he want to look at it? And the manager was like, I'll send it to him. So then they sent it. And like, I'll tell you the craziest story, dude. And I hope that every person who wants to go make something gets a story like this, because this is the only story I need. I can be done now, and this story is like
yeah.
Which is when we first made the casting list of these kind of roles we were trying to get people for. We had an executive producer who put in some money for the movie, and he had he had to like approve certain people. And I remember the top 3 people we had for this role in no particular order were like Danny DeVito, Steve Buscemi, and Jason Alexander. No. And I have such a memory of this executive producer going through the Excel document and leaving notes on everybody. We had like 20 people for this role. And next to Jason Alexander's name, he wrote, perfect, but impossible. And almost to the day, like a week off, 1 year later, Jason went on to Late Night with Seth Meyers to promote the movie and show a clip. And I was like, it's so crazy just to think 1 year ago, this executive producer was like, yeah, he'd be great. There's no way that's happening for what this is. And then he was like on late night TV promoting it and like showing a clip of me and him in the movie. And it was just like so surreal, you know?
That is so cool. That is awesome. That is a great story. And so, where can people watch that, by the way? If people want to go see Faith-Based, I think
Faith-Based and Fear Inc. I don't have it right offhand, but I know it's free in a bunch of places. So probably like the Peacock, Tubies of the world.
Okay,
I know it's there, or you can rent it for $3 wherever you can rent movies.
Nice. Excellent. Cool. I want to go watch it myself. You've been talking about Faith-Based for the length of time I've been following you, and I still have not gotten the chance to see it. So I need to go watch it.
There's too many movies.
Yeah, I
feel the same way. I'm like talking nonstop about the one I produced last year, Your Lucky Day, and it's like I'm annoyed at hearing myself talk about it so much. But there's also just like I'm behind on so many Oscar movies, so it's like, what do you expect?
Yeah, that one looks amazing too. Your Lucky Day looks amazing.
Thanks, man. I'm proud of it.
Yeah, really. Even just the trailer. I've only seen the trailer so far, but the cinematography is really well done.
Honestly, of all the things I've produced, that's the one I think you should check out. I'm really just like, that's like a good example of like the last couple of years. I do feel like I've found who I am or want to be as a filmmaker, and Your Lucky Day is like what I want to make more of. Like that's cool.
That's awesome. So when you talked about your voice earlier, is Your Lucky Day sort of more leaning into that voice?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't write Your Lucky Day. Dan did. He did a great job of it. Dan Brown is amazing. But I think for all of it, like acting and writing and producing in any version of like what your ideal version of the stuff that you put out and make is Your Lucky Day is closer. It's like a good example of like just trying to figure out. I think we're all as you keep making stuff. For me, it took a long time. Some people it probably is very quick, but it just takes making stuff over and over again in all capacities till you really find like who are you as a creative,
Yeah. And I know that for me as well, like I knew early on that, so in my non-writing life, let's just say, I'm the kind of person who's doing startups and consulting with companies about how to change things. I'm not as good at, I love working with other people and collaborating with other people, but going the traditional route is just not the thing I've normally done. Right.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like when you were talking about like trying to break in as an early actor, that's kind of like trying to go the corporate route of like, I'm going to try and, you know, work my way from the mailroom all the way up to CEO or whatever. Right. The other route is you go make your own stuff and see if you can make your own business work. Right. Like it's just kind of like the similar type of deal.
Totally.
And one of the things that I've benefited a lot from was when I finally told myself, like, hey, you can write all day long, but you need to go produce stuff as well.
Yeah.
And then this latest project I directed, and
Right.
I think that actually makes you a better writer, because now you're like, okay, look, I've done this before. I'm going to write it so that we don't have to worry about this thing or that thing. I'm going to just write it this way so that when the script comes out, the blueprint comes out, that is obvious that we don't need these things to make this story work. We just need this thing, and we need a lot of it, right? So
totally. No, it sounds spot on.
Yeah, that's cool. So after Your Lucky Day, what was the next project?
You know, I'd started to work as an actor at that point, which is like not as much in your control. You're just, you know, auditioning, but I had been, you know, that helped me have healthcare and stuff. And so that's, so, you know, I started working as an actor and got to do some fun stuff. And then the next thing I made was this short that I think right around the same time you made yours, or maybe a little before. I'd never directed something. I'd never necessarily wanted to direct something, I don't think, but this kind of came up with like a kind of a crazy story that happened that I had an idea for. And when I started to write it and put it together, I was going to have somebody direct it. And I just had a moment of like, it's personal enough that I'm going to annoy the shit out of whoever is directing it. Like I'm going to be at the monitor. And I was like, you know what? It's a short. I'm not spending someone these millions of dollars. I'm just going to direct it. And if it's garbage, then it's on me. But I'm very proud of how it turned out. And it was nice to see, like, we keep talking about, you know, things like finding your voice and who you are as a filmmaker. And like, it was a good experience to see, like, if I'm not by any means in control of everything, but if it is something that I'm kind of making these choices on, what would it be? And at the very least, I can say, this is what it would be. This is what, in my mind, a like pure Luke Barnett sort of like what I would want to make more of with one of my best friends who did it with me. It's like, it turned out that way, which I'm very proud of.
That's awesome. And what's the name of that one?
It's called The Crossing Over Express.
And that's the one you sent me, right? That's the one I watched.
Did you watch that one already? Oh yeah, you did watch that.
Yeah. Totally. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
So tell me more about what this directing experience was like. So you wrote it too, obviously. It's very personal.
I wrote it and I co-directed it with my best friend who I was going to do it by myself, and then I was in it, obviously. And so I was kind of like, you know what? I've never even directed before. And so I think I need to work with somebody who can be at the monitor, who knows kind of what I had in mind and whatnot. And my writing partner, who I write everything with now, he was just the perfect person to like do it with, who totally got what I was going for and had his own great ideas. And so we did it together, and it was, awesome. It was great, man. Yeah.
That's so cool. What are some of the things you learned from being a director?
You know, I think, it was interesting. I put a thing on Twitter like a week before we shot it. That was kind of a joke, but also not a joke, where I said, or no, maybe it was like the night before I made like a joke, but it was like, I basically was like, how do I direct? I'm doing this thing tomorrow. Anybody have advice? And I was just kind of joking because it was like the day before, but then people gave like real advice, you know? And there was some really good advice and some really bad advice. And I would say the worst advice I got, and I was really surprised that like 2 people said this. And to be fair to the 2 people that said this, I looked them up. I don't think they've done very much. So I don't know that like they were the best sorts. It wasn't like somebody who had directed a lot of stuff gave this bad advice. I think it was a person that was maybe a little bit outside the industry gave this advice. And, but they were like, they'd somehow been taught in film school that if you show your key crew, your department heads, you get too much input from them, that it's going to come across like you're not strong in your vision. Like you can't show weakness and that you don't know what you're doing. And so people literally gave advice on Twitter that was along the lines of like, don't ask questions to your DP. Don't do these things. Like, come at everybody with like, this is just, you can't show that you don't have your vision. So don't come across this way. And I would say that was the worst advice that I got. Like where I got really lucky is that I've been on the writing and producing side of enough projects and for enough time that I literally got to like handpick my key crew with all my favorite people. Like it was like, I picked every role from people that are the best of the best that I've worked with, who I trusted and were so good at their job. And so for me as a director, the big learning thing was like, your job, in my opinion, is to make sure they clearly know what your vision is and what you're hoping to get across here. But if you had these people that are way better DPs than you are, then they are a huge asset. They're as big of an asset as it gets. So for me, it was like, I'm not a techie. I'm terrible with technology. I study film. I study scripts. I know exactly what I was hoping to have the movie to look like and for these things to happen. But I 100% relied on these incredibly talented people to listen to what I said and then have their own ideas that were most often better than mine. You know what I mean? So really, it's just like, if you go to direct something and you have an incredible DP and an incredible production designer and an incredible cast to work off of, odds are it's going to be pretty good because they're all awesome. But if you're just doing it like, I'm a one-man show and I have to do all these things, and you're just like, oh, well, this DP is okay, but he's giving me a good deal. It's like, you're probably going to be 50-50 on whether it turns out well or not,
Yeah, that's a really good point. When it came to,
what was your, go ahead. What was your learning experience?
Yeah, one of my biggest things was I had never directed anything either. I'd produced some things. And by the way, my production experience had made me actually more reticent to be the director, because in my head, I associated the stress of being a producer with the stress of being a director, and those two things are not the same stressors, at least in my experience. And so, because on the production side, that side, I was a producer on this one too, and that just stresses me out. Like trying to make sure that the location's all good to go, you got the right permits, you got everything's lined up effectively. Like all of that stuff to me is, it's the kind of stuff that I will do because I want to make a film. But it's not the kind of stuff I do because it just comes naturally and I love it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I do in my day job. My day job is like, I'm in marketing. Like I do all that kind of stuff in my day job. I don't need that kind of extra stress. So I actually was really reluctant to produce, and I did the same exact thing you did. My DP for this has directed stuff in the past. And I said to him, would you co-direct it with me, because on the off chance that I suck, I don't want this film to suck. So like if I suck, then you just step in and you make it awesome, and then I have confidence. And he's an amazing DP, and so it just worked out great that it was like, what I didn't realize going into it was I thought that I thought the role of director just, I didn't go to film school. I'm a writer, so didn't go to film school, and so I thought that the role of director was going to be more so like, what lens are we using? What do I tell the gaffer to do today? And really, what it ended up being was I got to be the caretaker of the story and the visual telling of the story, and then my DP was able to just be like, no, we need more light over here, we need this over there. This is how we need to and it was just so it was like a great experience. I had a fantastic experience. It was phenomenal. Which would leave me open to doing it again. But I would want to, as you just said, I would only do it if I was working with good people. If you came across and said, "Will you direct my movie?" I don't have anybody else to work with, and you got to do everything. I'd be like, "Well, that's not really. I'm a caretaker of story. That's all. That's all I am, right?" So it's very similar in that regard. So, what do you want to come out of this film? It's very personal to you. Do you mind talking about it a little bit in terms of where the idea came from, or do you want to leave that a little bit more? Okay.
Yeah, totally. I lost my mom when I was like 17. So it was like a long time ago. And I think one of the things that's of the whole situation that's like the biggest bummer is I have like barely any pictures and zero video. So I have like some pictures now that have been given to me the last like handful of years I've tracked down. So I have a dozen or so photos and zero video though. So haven't just to give context, it's like I haven't heard the voice or what this in 20 something years. And a couple of years ago on my birthday, I'm driving and I get this text message from a number I don't know that just says happy birthday, and it has a YouTube link. And I click it and my heart stops, and it's my mom.
No way.
And I'm like, swerve over into the 7-Eleven parking lot. And I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And it's this video. She's talking into camera, and she's literally like, I wonder what you'd become. Would it be a policeman or a cowboy or a clown? Like, she's just like talking to camera. And it turns out it was my friend John's dad had been like cleaning out boxes and found some VHS tape from like before a school event, my senior year of high school. And he cut it out and put it on YouTube and just like texted it to me without any context. And so it was just like crazy. It was like, the best gift.
Yeah.
This is probably like 3 years ago. And I just had this, I'd been trying to like figure out if I, both a pitch for a series that I'd kind of roughly been working on and just something I wanted to make that was like just me. And I had this idea of like, what if you could respond? What if you could like have a conversation at the other side of that? And so I kind of took that idea and put it into a more like sort of supernaturally version where there's this this person who claims to be able to like raise the dead in the back of this truck. So it's almost like these traveling group of people who can raise the dead and let you have this last conversation. And so the short itself is kind of that. And we were kind of going for like like an emotional little bit Coen Brothers. Like I love like Americana and rural sort of like that world. And so the idea was like, what if we could, put a poltergeist kind of scenario into that space, which was kind of what the short was. And
it works so well too. And I think it's one of those things that we had this too in our film. We have a character who's dressed up in tactical gear and like wears a mask and is like she's actually like a teenage murderer, right? So she's a real young girl, and it was one of those things where it was like, and I think this is true of your film too. This can go either real right or real wrong. If there's you're like walking on a tightrope of like, if this doesn't work, then it might not work at all. And I will say yours works phenomenally well. Like I think it works.
Nice. I can't wait to see yours. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to see yours. I am happy with it. It was definitely like, it's like for anybody who ends up later on down the road seeing the short, it's definitely one of those things where I was like, there's a chance this goes so wrong. And then it's just and then it's very on me, which I will take, I'll take responsibility for.
Now, is this a proof of concept of any kind? Are you looking to do something like a feature with it, or like how do you feel about that part of it?
A little bit. We have a series pitch for it right now that we're gonna take out later this year, which is like the pitch of it will be like the series, and then we'll show the short, obviously, like as a proof of concept. But if the series weren't to sell, then I would be tempted to expand it and figure out what the like no budget feature that I direct is. Like, I hope and do feel confident in the series pitch, and I kind of I hope it goes that route. But if that doesn't work, then I like the concept and how the short turned out enough that I think I would say, okay, this is a 11-minute short. What's the 90-minute movie here? And can we go make it for like under $100,000 would be like my brain there.
I love the idea of it being a series. I mean, you could just do so many different characters interacting with that same kind of scenario.
Yeah.
A lot of rich content to be had there. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Great idea.
It'd be fun.
So one of the reasons I reached out to you, because we talked about doing a podcast together multiple times. And one of the reasons is that I am getting ready to, so just to give a little bit of context, one of the things I did not know we were going to have, but we had a lot of, was what, when we went to do our short, which ours is a proof of concept of a feature as well.
Oh, cool.
I contracted with Lucas Colombo, my DP. I love Lucas Colombo. He's amazing. Contracted with Lucas Colombo to be my DP and my co-director. And he brought in the team. And what I didn't know he was doing was that in order to get some more funding for the film, he was bringing in a bunch of other YouTubers, people who had like really big followings on YouTube. And they were our gaffers and our grips, and like all these big YouTubers were working on our film. And one of the things that we were going to do because of that was we were going to release the film on YouTube and have them drive all of their followers to our film. It was like, okay, we'll get more views that way. But then because they have a bunch of brand deals that they need to get out, they basically use the trailer to accomplish that, right? As opposed to using the full film to do that. So the film is still in progress, and we're still waiting for it to come out. But I know you were going to take your film on the festival circuit, and I thought to myself, maybe I should be taking my film on the festival circuit. I know I've got all these different options that I can use it for. I would love to hear your experience on the festival circuit, what you hope that your film does on the festival circuit, how you would, I mean, I know you talked about having more experience with the features than the shorts, but still, as it comes to getting meetings and being able to pitch projects, how do you approach the festival circuit, and how should I approach the festival circuit?
I think, not to be vague, but I think everyone is going to have a different ideal approach to the festivals. And I think also every movie, depending on what it is and the quality and the genre and all that stuff, is also going to have such an impact on it. And to be totally honest, not to be like pessimistic, but with a short, I'm not super hopeful on the festival circuit, and I don't really care about it. We are going to try some, but and it would be great. It's to be honest, it's already gotten into a few that we've had to like withdraw from in a weird way, but like, it's so tricky. Cause it's like, think about it. Like, I mean, I look at it like this, there's like a dozen film festivals that anyone in the industry cares about whatsoever.
Right.
Like in terms of like agents and executives and producers, other filmmakers, people who are also trying to do the same thing, they're going to be like, oh, that's awesome, it got into this, I can't wait to see it. But there's like 10 or 12 festivals that any producer or agent or whatever remotely cares about. And those are the ones that are nearly impossible to get into. And so therefore it's cool to do them, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do, but like, when I see someone short with like 15 laurels on it, and I haven't heard of one of those festivals, no part of me as a producer is like, holy shit, this won the Van Nuys Sci-Fi Film Festival. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like if you didn't get into either Tribeca, Toronto, South by Southwest, Sundance, Cannes, Berlin, however many of those, or the biggest, if it's a genre piece, the biggest genre festivals, Fantastic Fest, Fantasia, Citrus, Fright Fest, Beyond Fest, then no one cares in terms of the people that you're hoping will care.
Right.
So I, there's like different reasons to do it, and I'm all for it. We've submitted to some that aren't those, you know what I mean? We submitted to like some of the, we basically submitted to like the Academy qualifier ones, which can be like Cleveland, Atlanta, Seattle, that sort of stuff. We submitted to some of the genre festivals that I've already played. Fantastic Fest, Fantasia, Citrus, some of those. And then we've submitted to like Tribeca, where I'm an alum, and like a few other big ones. We submitted to South by and didn't get in. So I guess it's just, but then for me, it's like, I would submit to Short of the Week, which is also hard and a long shot. But if you get into Short of the Week, that's going to be a great, very legitimate online release where the industry matters. Like my lit agent subscribes to Short of the Week. Like she gets sent the shorts every week from that. So that's the kind of thing that like, that's a thing that like the industry actually cares about. I feel the same way if you have like a horror or a sci-fi about like Alter and Dust, which are two like YouTube channels that you can submit to. And if they release it to their fan base, they have millions of subscribers and they only take really, really high quality stuff. So when it comes out, it can get like a big release, so like those two things are like almost more important to me than the festivals, other than like if you can get into a South by or Sundance or whatever. But I don't know. It's a long-winded way of saying like I don't see a negative in fests, and I think and we have submitted to some that I just think would be a blast to go to, or are great festivals that have a great experience, and you meet other filmmakers, and there's like other huge positive benefits as to why I spent the $30 to do it. But I don't go into most of those thinking the producers at Plan B are going to care about this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
So if you that's really good, and I love that. It makes a lot of sense. If you were to say, I now have this calling card, right? I have a short film.
mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a couple under your belt. You've got scripts you were wanting to sell. What do you think is the pounding the pavement method to go get those things seen, to make the connections you need to make to get things produced? What would you say? Like, hey, there's festivals is one way to go, but you got, like you said, you got to be in the right festivals. Right people have to see it. What's the alternative to that? That I don't even need festivals. I'm just going to go do this instead.
I think, I mean, if you have the money, I would do festivals no matter what. Like, to me, it is a total positive. Like, as long as you're not going into it thinking that just because you got into Cleveland or something, which is a great Academy Award qualifying festival, but just because you got into Cleveland, you're not going to get the agent at CAA the way that you probably would if you get into Sundance. As long as you don't go into it with that mindset, they are great experiences for lots of film industry people to see your project. That I would do no matter what, while I'm doing the other things that you're probably asking about that I'll talk about. But I would probably do that. Like, to me, if you have the money, I would by no means waste my money on the like bullshit fests, but like, but I would submit to like the mid-tier, just like good experience film festivals, reputable stuff that's been around for 20 plus years. You know what I mean? Because there's no negative to that. The only negative is having the mindset of, because I got into this mid-tier festival, my life is going to change. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think things that I would do is like, be intentional and smart about when you do an online release. It's like just thinking about it strategically of like, what did you make? What's the best way to get this out there? Because a lot of people I see make something really, really good, and then they just put it on their Facebook or whatever, or their YouTube with their 12 followers. And it's like, nobody sees it. So I'm like, between all the various short film channels and Short of the Week and Alter and Dust and Amaletto and like all these outlets, I think I would be aiming for something like that, instead of just putting it on my personal channel. I think it's then about like, why did you make this? What are you hoping to use it to do? So like for yours, for example, it's like, if it's a proof of concept for a feature, I think once the short is finished and you're doing all these things that we're already talking about, you're submitting to festivals, you're planning the online release, you're doing all these things. I think my then focus would be like, is the feature script as good as it can possibly be? Is it like, I'd be making sure that's in great shape. And then, to a certain point, it's like, it's just the fates, in the sense of like, you have this great, phenomenal script and you have this great proof of concept that both these things are as strong as they can be. You're doing all the things that you can with the short in terms of hoping for festivals, hoping for a good online release. That's all you can do, is like, just be strategic about it all. And then I think I would be reaching out to people who have made or make similar stuff to what your feature is. So it's like, so much of it to me is like insane, mundane work. But like, think about it like this. I don't know what your feature is, but like, let's just say it's a horror thriller, one location that could be shot for under $300,000. I would then go on I'd go to like whatever last year's Tribeca lineup or South by lineup and scour movies and be like, which one of these fits that vibe? And then I'd be on IMDb Pro looking up all those producers and being like, are any of these some of them you'll click on and they'll have like, that'll be their only credit because they probably just gave money because they're rich or whatever. But then you might click on another one that has 40 credits that are all that type of movie, and I'm reaching out to them with like a really good email that's like, I got this great short that's about to be on Short of the Week, and here's this great feature script. It could be done at one location for $300,000. I loved this movie that I haven't even maybe seen you premiered at Tribeca. And you're doing that like 200 times, hoping that like 5 of those are like, oh, I'll read it. That'd be great. It's like, it's ultimately like a hustle, like everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I figured. In fact, I was creating a friend of mine has a YouTube channel, and I said to him, I want to talk to you about, I've got a strategy that I need to start to articulate about how I'm going to get a feature made. and he wants to grow his YouTube channel. I said, why don't we just brainstorm with each other? And I made this whole chart about like how if I do this and do that and do this, then give me the best chance. And it's like I'm preparing. I'm a fractional CMO in my day-to-day job.
Yeah.
And it's literally like I'm being a fractional CMO for my movie, right? Like, it's like, what would I do to get this in the hands of the right people? So that's really good. That's confirming that it's
so we have another script that got set up at the like towards the middle of last year to like a way bigger producer. And it's been really interesting to see. He makes movies that are huge. Like he makes massive studio movies. That's what he does. And one of the way that even he equated this whole journey of making any movie, whether it's, I think he's currently in production on Mortal Kombat 2 in Australia. Nice. And it's like, but be it Mortal Kombat 2 or your $300,000 indie, he was like, you got to think about it like it's pushing a boulder up a hill. And it's gonna be really hard for you to get that boulder to the top by yourself. So all you're kind of trying to do is get anyone that can help. That, you know, you don't want somebody that drags it down or that doesn't help, but you're constantly like, people will always ask, like, what's the order? Should I attach this director? Should I attach this actor? Should I attach this producer? And the reason there's not an answer there is because anybody that can help you push the boulder up the hill is only going to make it easier and keep that going. So like for this project, for example, and I can't like name who it is yet, but like, we got the script got sent out to a dozen producers. A few of them wanted to do it. We picked this guy. So all of a sudden we have this producer on who's got a huge resume. At first we're like, who are we going to attach next? Do we attach a director? Do we attach whatever? We happen to have at my same management company, an actress who randomly got to read the script because she's at the company. She was like, how do I be the lead role in this movie? Awesome. Very organically. And at first we were like, I don't know if we should do this because should we keep all roles open in case whoever buys, hopefully, the script has their own idea for who would play that. And this producer was like, as much as that's correct in certain scenarios, she helps push the boulder up the hill. And so it was like, great, let's attach her. So we attach her. First Zoom we get on with her is her being like, I have a director that I think we should reach out to, who's phenomenal director, who's one of the bigger names in horror right now. And so she calls him and she says, I got the script. It's so good. You got to read it. 2 weeks later, we get this email from his agent to like our manager. That's just like he wants to meet. Suddenly this guy comes on board. And then the conversation is like, who can play this brother role? And then between the two of them and the producer, it's like, well, what if we send it to this person? And everything is like, who can help push this boulder up the hill? And to me, that's no different on like a really tiny movie where it's just kind of like, who do you have a connection to? Who do you know that might just be a slightly bigger asset than you are?
Right.
And then can they bring on somebody that might be a slightly bigger asset than they are? And then it just kind of like keeps going, you know?
That's awesome. That's a great, no, I love that. I love that analogy. That's awesome. So one of the things that the example you just gave actually is a perfect segue into me asking this question. What made you look for, you just referenced bringing a producer on board first, as opposed to going to like a studio first to try and sell it that direction. What makes you decide to go in one way or the other? Like what's your kind of like approach to that?
My only approach there, to be honest, is that the movies that I've made as a producer have all been shot for under $700,000. And so I have great connections when it comes to, if I want to go make a movie for $200,000, not that I'll by any means know that I'll be able to make it happen, but I do know some people that will read it that like work in that space. Yep. I personally, as a producer, have no experience on bigger movies. Right. So like if it's a movie that's going to cost $2 million or $20 million, that's just not a world that I have any connections or experience in. So, so for one, I'm not the producer for this movie. It's like I wrote the script and I'm proud of the script, but for it to get made or sell, somebody way bigger than me has to be a part of it to make it happen.
Got it.
The same way that somebody making their first movie might have no connections and say Luke Barnett could help me because my movie can be made for $50,000. You know,
right. That's awesome. That's a good way of thinking about it. Like, I love that analogy because it really does mean that you can bring anybody on at any time as long as they're helping push that boulder up the hill, right? Like, that's cool.
People are often especially people who are more green, are too precious about certain things.
Yeah.
Because they, in their mind, this is going to be the biggest thing that's ever happened to the world. And
Right.
realistically, it's not. So realistically, it's like anybody who can help you, that's a great thing, you know?
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it. That's awesome. Yeah, I think unfortunately there's not a lot of people listening to the filmmakers who are scratching together everything they can to make film. They're all just listening to, well, who's the Hollywood Reporter talking to this week? That's what I'm
Totally.
listening to. That's a different world. Like, it's not a world that we all live
It's a
in.
different space, and it's a
Yeah.
space that we all could at any moment be in. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like that's the thing that's crazy about this industry. It's
Mm.
like we're writing a thing right now for a producer that like very easily will never get made or get
Mhm.
sold or anything. But there's also like it's a huge action movie. So it's
Mm.
like there is the crazy world
Yeah.
where like this producer who has sold 50 action movies sells it to Paramount, and then an even crazier world where it comes out with Keanu Reeves starring in it,
Right.
and suddenly this conversation is the guy on the Hollywood Reporter podcast
Yeah.
who's now sold 3 huge studio movies. That's like how quickly it can change,
Yes.
which I think is what keeps all of us psychopaths delusional enough to keep doing this, you know?
Right. Exactly. I love that. Why don't we end on this question? What do you hope that your next project looks like? What do you hope that your career looks like in 5 years? You're looking back. We talked 5 years ago, and you go, "What's happened since I talked to Jay on that podcast?"
Yeah.
Like, what do you hope to have happen?
I mean, I think right now what I'm doing that's been gratifying and like I'm very grateful and appreciative is like I've kind of developed this space right now where like I'm a working actor, I'm a working writer, and every now and again I will also produce somebody else's thing if I feel like it's very on par with my sensibilities and I can be an asset. I don't want to like producing is so time consuming and not creatively gratifying in the way that writing and acting is that I don't I've done enough producing work for projects that were just for money that I don't want to do that anymore. But I like producing if it's really bringing the right person's really cool vision to life. And I think my ideal 5 years from now would be kind of the same thing, but everything being on a slightly bigger level.
Mm.
Like, it's nice to work as an actor. I'd love to be like recurring on a show. Like I'd love to like have a somewhat regular acting gig, even if it's not a series regular. It's like, I'd love to be in 8 episodes of CSI every year, just as like great. That's just constantly happening, and gives me the freedom to then go make weird little indies all the time while also writing for other people on a bigger level. So I guess like kind of what I'm doing right now, but I'd like it all to increase by like 100%. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
like I feel like I'm here, but I'm getting to do all 3 of those things. And I want to keep doing those 3 things, but I want them all to take flight at a different level.
that makes sense. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I think the best thing about all those things, I got 2 kids. So it's also for me, it's like taking what it's happening right now and being able to do it on a much better level. It's like the one thing that this career gives you if you're successful in it is time. You know what I mean? It's like just, you know, sometimes you're crazy busy, but for the most part, it's like all of those things give you the time to say like, oh, my kid's got a thing at her school at noon on a Tuesday. I can go to that. You know what I mean? Like that's really important to me.
That's awesome. That's cool. Well, I really appreciate you spending an hour with me. Fantastic conversation. Loved hearing about your journey, learning about festivals some more, learning about what you would do if you're in my shoes and like you're looking to get something else that's produced. So thank you for coming on. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me, man. It's great to chat with you.
Yeah, and we'll do this again. We'll do this again. We'll take a little time and you can come back and tell me all the things that
we'll circle back when I'm on CSI.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds great. That sounds amazing. Cool. Well, thank you so much. And if people want to like watch some of your stuff, they want to learn more about you, like where do people go?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and Your Lucky Day. I'm going to promote Your Lucky Day. It's available for rent anywhere you can rent movies for $3. It's available on Blu-ray, and it should be streaming soon, but that hasn't been announced yet.
Awesome. I can't wait. I'm going to go watch that one for sure. And I still want to watch Faith-Based too. That sounds amazing. Special thanks to Luke Barnett for joining me today. What did you think of our conversation? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you follow Luke over on X, so you can hear all about the new films that he's creating. Thanks again for watching or listening. Now let's go write, direct, or produce something awesome.